But what we'll do first is we're just gonna kind of go around the room and get to know each other, because a part of this local government academy is not just learning about the city, but meeting your neighbors and building a connection that is super important. So what we're gonna do is just go around and say your name, your pronouns if you feel comfortable, and then your neighborhood. But then I'd love to hear what you're most excited to learn about throughout the 6 weeks. It can be something just, whole department, or if there's like one specific question that you want answered. I think it'll be really great to be able to hear maybe some other people have the same question as you. So I'll go first. My name is Kalina Pritchard. I'm the neighborhood specialist at the City of Missoula. I've been in my job for about 2 years now, but this is my second local government academy too. So super excited to be here. My pronouns are she, her. And we'll just kick it off. We'll start maybe with you and then go down this row and kind of roll our way back.
Yeah.
So.
My name is Chris Johnson, he, him. I live in the Slant Streets, Rose Park neighborhood. And I think government can feel like big and ominous, and I just kind of want to understand it a little bit more.
My name is Adam Jones, he, him. I live in Bridgetown. I'm an architect here in Missoula, and just want to learn more about how the government works and get to know some more people.
I'm Melody Cunningham, she, her. I live in Target Range, and I am here because I'm also running for the legislature, and I think that the legislature stops local things from happening, and so the more I know about the way the local works, maybe if I get elected to serve, I can make a difference.
My name is Taylor Montgomery, and I live in the riverfront area, I think is what it's called, neighborhood. And I'm here mainly because I work from home and it gets me out of my house, but also to learn new stuff as well.
I'm Emily Ralston. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the west side. I work for Destination Missoula, and so I get little pieces of of city happenings and how things work, but I'd love to know more and more specifically about sustainability resiliency planning that's going on in the city.
Good evening, I'm Jessica Harrell. I am a renter in the University District. I love just learning more, and so this is a really great opportunity. I also work for nonprofits in my history, and currently I'm working with the Human Resource Council, so I was hoping to take this as an opportunity to see where I could work with the city.
My name is Dylan Knapp. I live in the Lewis and Clark neighborhood, and then I guess today was my last day actually at work. I was working at the front desk of Montana Legal Services, but I'll be starting at the Mansfield Center on Monday. And I signed up for this just to learn more about the community. I just moved here, and I was hoping to learn more about the way things work within the city. It was going to be very helpful with my old job, and I think it'll still be helpful with my new job. So I'm just excited to learn whatever I can.
My name is Paul Mwingwa. I'm a Lesotho refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I live in Lolo, and I'm a student at Missoula College. I work at St. Patrick Hospital, and I'm the delegate for Refugee Congress. Yeah, I want to learn more and to see how neighborhood can be involved in everything. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Beverly, and I live in the north side neighborhood. I'm she, her, and I am here because I'm excited about learning everything I can and to be a better informed citizen and maybe to help make a bigger, better impact in a positive way for our city.
I'm Krista, and she, her. I just want to learn more about how the city works because I think it's kind of mysterious.
I'm Rachel Katzer. I also use she, her, and I live in Moose Cangoli, and I just want to figure out how it all works.
I'm Claire Battaglia. I'm in the Lewis and Clark neighborhood, and I'm on the leadership team, and I feel that being effective on that team just requires a really good kind of working knowledge of how everyone works together.
I'm Noah Durnell, he, him pronouns, and I live in Rose Park neighborhood, right by the Dairy Queen, in fact, which is fun, dangerous. I got involved with this because actually Mel, who I'm really close with, told me I should do it, but also when I was a student at UM, I was the student body president and very involved in the governance side of things in higher education, and I just want to expand on that and see how it works for the city.
My name is Chris Foster. I live in the River Road neighborhood, and I'm here to try to learn in more detail about jurisdictions and responsibilities of the various departments in the cities, in the city here. And that's because of events in the past that made it clear to me and my neighbors that we really didn't know. And so we were asking each other who to call, how do you do this, and it was a long slog. So we were told about this last time, but it wasn't in time for that last year's. So I signed up for this year's to learn more.
My name is Tara Wesley. I'm in the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood. Pronouns are she, her. I've been a lifelong Missoulian, and this governance is completely outside my wheelhouse in my educational sphere, and so I'm here to just learn and broaden my knowledge base, find out how my city works.
Thank you. My name is Eva Dunn-Frobig. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in the Riverfront neighborhood. I'm on the Riverfront leadership team, and I also just wanted to be more informed, and I was recently elected the co-chair of the leadership team, so I'm running meetings, and I just want to make sure that people who come to the meetings, I have an accurate response for them about where to go, next steps, and just to learn more and to meet new people.
Hello, I'm Clint Whittle-Frazier. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm in the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood, and I also joined the leadership team as well, so I really want to know how the local government works to serve effectively on that. And I'm also curious how certain policies are made and how action gets done through the city, and just be really knowledgeable to learn about how things in Missoula happen.
Hi, Will Whittle-Frazier, Franklin to the Ford neighborhood. Government, what even is it? So excited to find out tonight.
Hey y'all, I'm Eric Warren. I'm from he, him, and Lewis and Clark neighborhood. I'm also on the leadership team, and so part of one here is to kind of understand how policies and planning get made for transportation and growth and those sorts of things.
Hi, I'm Katie George, and I go by she, her, and I live in the North Side, West Side neighborhood. I think you have to say it all together. I'm not sure, because the West Side now is way, the historic West Side, somewhere around there. And I'm here to I think I'd like to get more involved in the government and city government and see how it all functions.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten Miller. I grew up in Missoula, and then I've left for a really long time. And now I'm back. When I applied for the academy, I was in the Riverside neighborhood, but pretty soon I'll probably be more in the university district. I grew up in the university district. I work with a group called Eco City Builders, and I've been doing a lot in other places where I've been living and working and internationally. But now that I'm back, the city is so different. And I'm just fascinated by it, and just want to learn more about it, and especially at the neighborhood level, I'm really curious about that. And so, really happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Scott, I think one of two, I'm not sure the other. And I also live close to the DQ, which I know opens in about 6 days. So. You'll find me there. And I study architecture, but life kind of took me out of that, and I've always had a dream of working in urban design or within a city. So it's when one of my neighbors, Becky, introduced me to this course in accounting, I got really excited. So I'm here.
Hi, I'm Becky. I live in the University District, and I've for years wanted to be more involved with local government, so this seemed like a great opportunity.
Hi, I'm Kathy Steen, and I live in the Lewis and Clark neighborhood. I've lived in Missoula 40 years, and it's way over time to know more about my government.
Kathy.
I'm Kathy Dayshaw. I'm on the leadership team for Moose Can Gully South 39th. And I had been on that for years, and I took a little break for a while, but I decided to get back on that. And I'm kind of a zoning nerd. I used to go to zoning meetings, and I'm just very interested in the whole process, and I'm interested in the having input on the rapid bus transit in the middle of Brook Street, and trying to bring some good things to my neighborhoods and just do what I can.
My name's Allison Wilson. My pronouns are she, her, and I live in the heart of Missoula. I'm really excited to learn about the city's budget. Also want to know more about zoning. It really confuses me. So, here for that.
Good evening. I'm David Prococi. I use he, him pronouns. I live in the University District. Thanks for the opportunity to be here in a warm place with food. I'm really interested in more in learning about how to be civically engaged in town, and mostly working with underprivileged communities, how I can kind of spread this knowledge to get more of us involved.
I'm Tom Huber. Hi. He, him. I am in the University District, right off the hip strip, below where I live. I'm here today because I'm really interested in growth. Missoula's been rapidly growing for many, many years, and I'm interested in what that plan looks like and how that gets formed.
Hi, I'm Joy Seymour. I live in the West Side neighborhood. I'm just here to learn about our government, how it works, see how more of our voices can be heard, and how we can get together more as a community.
Hello, I'm Julie Anton. I go by she, her. I think I'm the only person in the room that lives in Lower Miller Creek, which is crazy. I'm here today. Basically, I own a small real estate firm, so I feel like the more knowledge that I have about local government, how everything works, who to go talk to, the more I can help both my agents and my clients. So, thank you.
Didn't forget. I know. I'm Jen Worrell. I go by she, her, they, them pronouns. I'm Franklin Fort, and I'm also on the leadership team. And I just wanted to come here to learn more so I can be a more effective member of that team in my neighborhood.
Awesome. Did we get everyone? Let me just pass out these last couple binders. Thank you for bearing with us. Melody. April. No, okay. Terry. David. Towns.
The other David.
Sarah. Oh, look at that. Those people just aren't here. Julia. And then Scott Elder. Okay, look at that. So we have 3 presentations today, and then there's going to be time for questions right after, and then we're going to have an activity towards the end to give you all a little bit more hands-on experience and just be able to work with maybe some of the problems that City Council might deal with. So I think the first one that we're going to do is our executive branch, and we have Mayor Davis here to talk about our local government and what the executive branch does within the city. So I'll have you come up. Do you have a presentation? No. Okay.
I hope that's okay. Nobody want to look at PowerPoints, did they? All right.
And then
just in case we need to refer to the charter.
Yeah. And we do have a charter in everyone's thing. So, and then just a reminder that we have a lot of snacks. So feel free to use those. Anyways, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for participating. This is awesome. It's really great to see you actively engage with your government. Our colleague and good friend, Commissioner Josh Slotnick, will often say that local government is us, and that's exactly right. And that's the beauty of local government, is that it's you and I. We step up as often as when elected officials, we step up as elected citizens. You think about it, the head of public works or somebody that has some specific technicality is really hired for those really specific technical skills. But in some cases, in many cases, like the mayor, for example, is an elected citizen. You know, that's really the idea and the point. The executive branch when I had this thought we were going to review the charter first, so we didn't, and that's okay. So I'll review a little bit of that as I share my presentation with you. Missoula is a Class A city, and that means that we have self-governing powers, which means that we basically can do everything that the state tells us we can't do, whereas the county is the other way around. Their powers exist by what the state allows them to do. It's a very different situation. You're engaged folks, you've probably seen in the last couple of legislative sessions, the state has continued to pass several pieces of legislation, taking away quite a bit of our self-governing power, in fact. So it is an interesting tug of war. We are not alone in that. I think we see that all across the United States, actually, in some ways. And so what it says from our charter is self-government powers, and we have self-government powers and shall have all powers not prohibited by the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the United States of America, the Montana Constitution, and the laws and the state of Montana in this charter. So the mayor is directly elected by the voters, and I serve as the chief executive. So to that extent, I carry out all of the ordinances. I am responsible for carrying out all the ordinances and resolutions that are passed by the legislative body, the city council, and then all associated documents and things that are necessary to actually carry out those laws. I am the lead staff, right? Direct the whole city to do that. The day-to-day responsibilities of administering the city, a newly elected mayor or any mayor is directing their priorities across the city. And so the department heads are approved by city council. So I can select department heads. Those folks are approved by the city council. Per our charter, the mayor does have the opportunity to hire one individual without city council approval. By definition, I think it's called an assistant. Who that person is our chief administrative officer, and that's Dale Bickle. Dale's been with the city for 8 years. He's been was with the county for 12 years before that, so he's been with local government for 20 years. So you can think of him as basically serving as the chief of staff. So in my role, I pretty much manage Dale. And then Dale manages all other, in terms of like a supervisory position. Montana is a unique, and Missoula is a unique situation. You often hear about cabinet changes where somebody that might be a newly elected executive like myself would have a cabinet change, like the governor has a cabinet change. We don't have that here. I just went to, you might have saw on the news, I had the opportunity through a scholarship to attend a program at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and it's funded through the Bloomberg Foundation, and it's all about basically helping new mayors transition into this new job. And all of my colleagues were talking about how they were forming their team, who they were bringing into the office with them. And it was an interesting conversation because that is not the situation for us here in Missoula. Now, of course, through management and some other things, could you make changes? Yes, but it would all be within the accordance of law. And so in a lot of ways, though, we have an opportunity because there is consistency and stability with our department heads, and we do have excellent, wonderful, dedicated, and smart department heads in Missoula, so very lucky in that sense. I just came off of the campaign trail, and so that is top of mind, I think, for me to just mention to you, after having campaigned across the city and having talked to so many different residents, hearing from folks, that's really the mayor's role in so many ways, is being that direct connection to the citizens, to the folks that just voted you into office, working alongside city council. The mayor serves as the presiding officer during city council meetings. So the mayor has a role with city council, but is not part of the city council, whereas in some city government structures, the mayor is a function of council. But we have what's called a strong mayor form of government here in Missoula, and it's mostly akin to larger cities. If you look across the United States, mostly this form of city government is utilized with larger cities. Here in Montana, it's us and Butte, Silver Bow. Butte, Silver Bow is a consolidated government, so it's different than Missoula. So think about if Missoula City and Missoula County were one government, that's how Butte, Silver Bow is. And in that sense, they also have a strong mayor type of situation there. But it's a little bit, a little bit different, but most representative. Well, on a day-to-day basis, what it looks like for me to help carry out the city's strategic goals. First of all, I would say that my priorities and platform align very strongly with the city and what the city is already going in a lot of ways. And so I didn't come in as some massive disruptor, but you could, as the mayor, you could come in and say, this strategic plan, done. That's your prerogative. Would you have happy constituents and staff? Probably not. But there is that executive authority to do that. The city has actually a very well-articulated strategic plan and set of goals. We utilize 3 lenses by which we make decisions: climate, housing, and equity. These are all things that are strong values of mine as well. And so my goal is to help carry out the strategic plan as effectively and efficiently as possible with the staff, and then working along city council to pass resolutions and ordinances to do that. On a day-to-day basis, what does it look like? A lot of meetings, but that's natural. I think especially as, I think that's always gonna be the case with the mayors, especially because you have a lot of constituents that want to meet with you, business leaders, you've got other elected officials, and then city council. We have 12 city council members, which is a large body for city council in a lot of ways. I'm sure you're familiar with other city structures, and Missoula's quite a large city council, in fact. So I want to be able to meet with those folks individually to stay connected and make sure that they have the opportunity to hear from me directly around updates and things that they need to know, things that they might need to know that are coming up on the horizon that are administrative priorities or issues that we can help issue spot on and think about how we're going to work on that going forward. And it's just a really important way for us to stay connected and in frequent communication. And then I also meet with a lot of staff. I will tell you, I thought that I would, like day 2, I would be out of the mayor's office, I would be cruising around all of City Hall, I would get into all the other city buildings, I would meet with all the city staff in their own habitat where they meet and where they work, and it is really almost impossible to get out of the mayor's office. Our city has grown over time, as you can imagine. I mean, our community has grown significantly, and naturally the city government has as well, as there's been more demands and to meet the needs of our citizens. And the mayor's office is a conference room. There's a large conference table in my office, which is great actually, because the amount of visitation that comes into that room is very frequent. I don't leave it very often as a result, but it's really awesome now, because in some ways, I was talking to a colleague that I'd met at that Harvard program, which one of the best things is to now have 26 other mayors from across the country that we can stay connected and support each other in this role. And one of them had said, yeah, I had a meeting in my office the other day and somebody said, I have worked for the city for 15 years and I've never been in the mayor's office. And that's a really interesting thought. That's not how we operate here. We're pretty darn accessible. That's been the culture of the City of Missoula, and certainly something that I want to keep. As a priority. Boy, what did I forget? Let me look. This is Ginny Merriam. She's our communications director, and she's been with this city for how many years, Ginny?
Almost 18.
Almost 18? Absolutely. So what am I forgetting?
Feels like 18 days.
Good answer.
I think people might be interested in just learning what your average day is like, because it is crazy.
Yeah, I don't really know if there is an average day. I mean, I think about if I remember what my calendar looks like tomorrow morning at 8:30 we meet with, and keep in mind, I just took office in November, so there's a lot of first meetings that are still happening where people want to get together. But tomorrow will be the Missoula Downtown Association, the Business Improvement District, and the Downtown Foundation. And so Linda McCarthy, their staff, and some board members will get together in the morning and talk about strategic goals in terms of the downtown master plan, things that the city is currently working on, and probably also, a lot of times this is a meet and greet. It's an opportunity to connect with people, but then it also is an opportunity for items that need attention to rise up. So folks, they're often, the goal of people meeting with me is, I need to get something on your radar. I need this to be on your radar. I need you to help either move along an initiative or, work with council on this or whatever that kind of political nudge, right? That little bit of influence might be. And then after that, I meet with several different council members, and because I'm just sort of getting into a rhythm, I'm meeting with them on 30-minute meetings, which is kind of short, I will say, but we are getting into a rhythm. So I have several people that I'm meeting with back-to-back in that sense. I actually have a lunch with a friend tomorrow, which is very unique, but we work downtown, we might as well take advantage of that. And then in the afternoon, meeting with the executive director of the Paparello Center, somebody that has been a long-term colleague of mine. If you don't know, I came from the affordable housing world, and so for 15 years I was the executive director of Homeward. So Jill Bonney, who's the executive director of the Paparello, is a colleague of mine, and now we have a different working relationship. The city contracts with the Paparello Center to administer the Johnson Street facility, and of course we work closely together as we're all addressing houselessness in Missoula. So I'll have an opportunity to meet with her tomorrow, and we'll get together and talk about a host of items that we're working on. And I left out a few things, so that's one example. Today I actually participated in a regional meeting. Actually, yeah, it was a regional meeting in Seattle. I was not in Seattle. I participated virtually. And it was about this long-term plan to bring passenger rail back to our area. It's an initiative that's really been a passion of Commissioner David Strohmeyer's. It is an opportunity through the Inflation Reduction Act and to really reinvigorate passenger rail, both on lines that have been decommissioned, but also to soup up existing lines. And so for Montana, there would be a line that would come up through Wyoming, through Billings and through Missoula off to Seattle. It could really offer some amazing opportunity. This is major long-term planning, but it was a way to connect with all sorts of FTA members and transit administration and federal rail and other city planners and folks like that we had staff in the room. We're trying to get that group to come meet in Missoula this spring or summer, so that was another reason to be on the call. But I had to take a little break and meet with our strategic, we have a weekly strategic strategy meeting with our senior leadership team. So of all department heads, of which there are 10 of us with all of our city attorneys, there's a small group of us that plan from week to week about how to kind of keep certain subjects on the radar. So from a management perspective, again, we're kind of stepping outside of the policy role, outside of the politician role of what that virtual meeting was, then it's like stepping into the executive and administrative role of what carrying out the duties, the day-to-day activities of the city are. So that's just like the last couple of days of what that looks like. Mondays are our city council days. And so those can be pretty busy. We had a 5-hour city council meeting on Monday night. And that is right on top of your whole day. And so oftentimes, again, meeting with county commissioners. We have 3 county commissioners in Missoula County, and so you can't meet with, if you meet with 2 of them, that there's quorum. So I meet with them individually, one-on-one, and we do that just so we're staying connected on different initiatives that are happening with each of our bodies of government, and making sure that we have good personal work, like we develop personal relationships in order to do this work well together. That's a really awesome opportunity and a unique thing that's happened in our community in the last several years. That relationship hasn't always been like that, and boy, you sure can get a lot more done when you have good, trusting relationships. It really, really matters significantly. I feel like I'm sort of leaving stuff out because you really do need to leave some room for unexpected items. A lot of the unexpected items, some of the things I can't really talk about yet because it's not public information, but things that are like, hey, this organization or this situation has a bit of a crisis. We need you to know in case X, Y, or Z is happening. And so in the background, we say, okay, what do we need to do to try to help maybe solve for that? Are there any, are there any resources that we can bring to the table? Those kinds of things happen on a relatively routine basis. Not that there's a whole lot of emergencies out there, but when people have an important item, they want to raise it up the flagpole and bring it to your attention. What else? What are some other interesting things?
News media.
Oh, geez, yeah, thank you.
And tomorrow, for instance, in early afternoon, Mayor Davis will be doing an interview with Montana PBS reporter. I'm kind of excited about it. He does longer form stories, and he's looking at homelessness. He's from Bozeman, and he's been doing some stories there about RV camping and their new ordinance. And so he's looking at Missoula as he has decided, and he's probably correct, that Missoula is a city that is doing the most things around homelessness. Doesn't mean we're solving it, but it means we're doing this and this and this and this and
in Montana.
Trying to put together a package of things. So part of that unexpected part of the day is me saying, I need you to talk to such and such news reporter about such and such thing. And I always think about mayors, so I'm on my third mayor now, and they're all different, but they have things in common. They have to be almost triple facing. So they're facing inward to the city staff and running the city, the whole organization that is the city, and she is everybody's boss, the mayor. I say the mayor's my boss, Dale's my boss too. But then she's also outward facing to all the constituents that we serve. People say, I want to talk to the mayor. And juggling that so that there's an appropriate amount of interaction between the mayor and the people she serves is also really important for us to do. And then that third direction is to the news media. We have very good relationships that we work very hard on with local journalists. We have our moments, but generally speaking, we want to be covered by the press, and I work hard to give press all the information that they need to connect them with the right person, to help them meet their deadlines, and a lot of it is, I want to talk to the mayor. So she has to know everything about everything, even though she's only been here for 2 months.
So,
She's doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
But serving those three interests and having interactions almost equally in those 3 segments, inside constituents and news media, is a balancing act in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sure is. Any questions for me? They can come up all the way, obviously through the night as well, but.
Sure.
When you mentioned if you met with 2 of the county commissioners, that it would be a quorum, like, is there some sort of recording or something that needs to happen if a quorum is reached and you're meeting?
Technically, there's supposed to be a notice to the public. So that would be the same if there were 7 city council people. There would need to be a notice to the public, and then Montana has open meeting laws. So open meeting laws allow for, well, mostly it's notice to the public, and then there is public comment is not as, I mean, it's defined that you need to offer the opportunity. We err on the side of we let the public comment on everything we do, and so yeah, but mostly it's public notice, so the public can be aware of what's being discussed. Something to clarify, because this was even helpful for myself, is that, like, for example, when we publicly notice city council meetings or publicly notice committee meetings, and there are agenda items where documents are attached, the documents in and of themselves, if there's an edit in between the time that it was reviewed and the time that it's being considered, that's acceptable. It doesn't have to be the verbatim thing. It's not that it can't have as long as by concept and by the majority of its subject it didn't change, then it's still permissible. The public just has to have a reasonable understanding of what's being discussed and how they would participate.
That's a good question. David, do you have one?
Yeah, first, with your busy schedule, I'm wondering how you keep up with your email. What your schedule sounds like. And also, as busy as you are, how do you prioritize who you're meeting with first? Like, is there a strategy to that, or first come? How do you?
Thank you. Great questions. So I don't keep up with my email. As Dale Bickle said, email me at your own demise, because and it's tough. It's tough. So I've been trying to figure out strategically how to find time for that. I hate to say it, it's often in the evenings and things like that. And I want to be more responsive if I can during the day. At this point, meetings are literally back to back, so I'm always late and I'm always leaving early. Literally, that's how it is. Or I have to be late if I want to, take a personal break, for example. So yes, one of the things in terms of strategy and how to strategically plan my calendar, because it just gets filled up. It will, absolutely just get swamped. And naturally it would right now. It's mayor onboarding time, right? There's all these new subjects and folks out. There's all of this orientation, I would call it, right? I had an opportunity to meet with the 3 municipal judges 3 weeks ago. And it's one of the opportunities where it's like, we haven't figured out what our meeting cadence is gonna be yet. It's obviously really important that we do stay connected. We're 2 of the arms of government, and I have my schedule figured out with council, but I don't necessarily have my schedule figured out with the judges. But for example, like that was one of the meetings that have been on the list of things to do. So that was a lot of the strategy was, what are the essential groups and people that we have to meet with? So municipal judges would be one, and all of council would be another. Business leaders that we do a lot of work with. Let's finally have Missoula Downtown Association on the list. Those were kind of folks that we identified. So it's a balance of internal meetings and what ones I really need to be at, and I chose to participate in almost everything at the beginning to get a sense of what was happening. And then I can say, okay, I don't necessarily need to be in that, I don't need to necessarily be in that, but I did want to know, what is this meeting's intent? Who meets here? It's an opportunity to, there is a management team, for example, and the city is a large body. So there are a lot of supervisors and middle management staff that I don't work with on a daily basis. I work with the department heads, really, on a very routine basis. So attending that a few times was an important thing, but that was one thing that I could step away from. And then the priorities of right now, the first 100 days of time in office. What are my priorities are to work closely with City Council. It's very important that we have a strong working relationship. And there was opportunities for us to take a look at the way that some things were happening, communication, updates from the mayor, different technical things that we could do to help support the council with different information. And so we've been working on how does the administration help better support the council to be responsive to constituents? Because there are more and more things and more demands on everybody's calendars. And there's 12 council members and there's leadership within council. So we got together and had talked about the flow of the agenda. The flow of the agenda for the city hasn't been updated in 17 years. And we talked about opportunities to better address the business of council. There's a lot that this body does, necessarily by law, that it needs to take care of during the council meetings. We heard from some constituents that they're not attending our meetings because they don't know sometimes when that will be scheduled. They know it's part of the evening, but they don't necessarily attend because they're not sure when we'll finally get to that particular agenda item. So we sort of flopped that a little bit. We made it a little bit more so we're focused on council business. Of course, still allowing for public comment throughout that on items on the agenda and then not on the agenda. But we just rearranged some things to take out function that had, it was a final consideration on public hearings, and it had been through the pandemic when participation was really challenging. And we wanted to make sure that the public had the opportunity, the city did, to make sure that the public had the opportunity to make sure that they knew that this public hearing was happening. But it wasn't necessary anymore, and it really made it confusing, as a new presiding officer, I would say. But also, even city council saying, we don't need this anymore. It played its role. So we trimmed that out. So that was a lot of my meetings with city council leadership and others were planning some of that administrative type of things. The other things are my agendas around budget. You know, I've been wanting to really understand the finances and the budget of the organization, and talking about how we can answer what I heard from constituents while campaigning, which is how do we have a more transparent and engaging process? And so the proposal that I've put forward is, rather than presenting a mayor's budget at the beginning and then department heads presenting to city council, fitting into that executive budget, city council asking questions, and then finalizing a budget, we're going to flip that around, and city departments will present on their budgetary needs and wants throughout the process. That's also a public process, so we'll hear from council members and the public, and then the mayor's executive budget will be suggested at the end. So we're going to try that just from a formatting perspective to see if that helps bring about more engagement from the public and from council, and see if that really does change the feel. Those have been priorities. Things like climate. Climate's a real big priority for me. We have money that has been allocated through the federal government, through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And through the Bloomberg program, they said, hey, would you be willing to host 3 fellows from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government? They have 2 weeks. They'll come out and help basically you move along an initiative. So we had them work within our Community Planning, Development, and Innovation department and take our capital improvement plan. So there are all sorts of different capital improvements that we plan for in the city. And that capital improvement plan is adopted by council. But a lot of those projects are not funded. You know, we know what some of the funding will be. We know we have to go after grant funding for some of it. But the idea behind it is that, okay, these are the necessary capital improvements that we know we need to do because they've been informed by different planning processes and those kinds of things. So we overlaid that process, so they took a look at some grant funding that we might be able to accelerate some of those projects. And some of those then may be able to be funded by those federal dollars, and we could free up some state and local funding for other work so we can actually catalyze some more important projects here. But then we have to meet and talk about how do we actually staff that? Because it sounds good, but federal grants at that scale are very comprehensive, and writing them is one thing, but then you have to manage them and you have to be compliant for the duration of the program. So we have to be thoughtful about, before we chase the money, we have to make sure that we can actually administer that. The City of Missoula is excellent at that work, and I'm confident that we'll be able to take on more. So I'm thinking about priorities in that sense, and then one of the things that I did recently was just say, if possible, no meetings before 10 in the morning. But it doesn't really work, so sorry, that's just, so I gave my executive assistant, who works in the mayor's office, basically here are the first 100-day priorities. Another is bringing back conversation around the fire levy. That was something that was on the docket to be on the November ballot, and because of the timing of our property tax bills and assessments last year, City Council took that off because we just didn't know what was going to happen. That does not stop the fact that we have a very significant need. Our community has continued to grow. Demand for fire calls has far exceeded, it's far exceeded our ability to be as responsive as we want to. And so that conversation is something that I've prioritized as well. So I can keep going, but I thought about like what are my key priorities and what are the city's key priorities, and the fire ballot and levy is a good example of one.
Do you know when that will be on the ballot?
Do I know it will be?
When that levy will be on the ballot?
The city council will have to place that on the ballot for June. That's a choice that the city council can make. We've been talking about that from
strategic perspective, quite frankly. You know, we have a choice to work with the county to put that on the city, the school. MCPS has, of course, their school ballot, and that's in May. There's the June primary, or there'll be the November general election. And right now we're looking at the June. Yeah. So lots of information and things that we need to get out so the public better understands the needs and the benefits of that situation. Yeah.
I was curious, you mentioned the strategic plan, if that was available for public view, and
Absolutely.
you could speak to maybe where we are in that process.
Well, the strategic plan was really done, and it's been the first year of a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. It is 100% available on the website. If you just look up City of Missoula strategic plan, it's fully available to you there. And we have not talked about a report out on progress of that strategic plan. That is a good idea. Thank you.
I include it in the email that was sent out yesterday. And so I threw in a couple different things that you can look it over, because it is some really good information that does guide the work that the city does.
All right. Well, is it time for us to move on to another?
There's one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that.
One more question. You were talking about department heads and budgets and priorities and all this, and I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail about how that back and forth works, because I know that probably your department heads have their priorities and wants and their own things that they want to get accomplished. And then as mayor, you're coming in and you had your own plan. And so there's a little give and take there. There's money involved. You mentioned staffing and whatnot. And I wonder if you could go into detail how that all gets resolved. And you probably take the numbers to, like the budget to get approved by the city council, I'm assuming. And could you just go in more detail how all that works and how those discussions happen and how it gets resolved?
Well, I haven't been through it yet, so we'll see how it gets resolved. So the city council, well, actually, you'll, as part of this course, and you know this from seeing your agenda, you'll actually have an evening for the budget, and so that's towards the end of this, which will be a lot of opportunity to get into the detail. The other initiative that I am putting forward this year is taking program inventory of every department. And so we know, I mean, we have a very big challenge as a community, right? We've got a city that is growing, demands that are growing. We've just gone through the most significant housing cost spike in our history, and inflation, the highest inflation in 40 years. The city is not immune to that. All of our costs have gone up as well as every other business, right? All of our labor costs, everything that it takes to run the city, asphalt, water, water mains, everything. And so we're managing all of that alongside the growing needs that we have, and then the property tax situation. So in evaluating our budget, we need to be able to say, what are the things that, what can we trim out, or is there anything that, because right now it's not feeling like that from the staff. The staff's feeling like we don't even have enough capacity to get this work done, to be honest. And that's not, everywhere I go, that feels like that's the case. It was the same way at the nonprofit I just left. It's the same way at most people's businesses that I hear from. It's interesting. Same here at the city. So what we're gonna do is a program inventory and require it to be how they will have to make that decision of what's determined as a program, as if it fits within a certain accounting code. And then it's a one-page document that will be a relatively simple way for me, but also I think for council and the public to understand underneath Parks and Rec, and that will be a monster because there's actually a ton of different programs that happens under the Parks and Rec department. But what are the things that we're doing? Program description. What is the source of funding? Is the funding source at risk? So one of the examples would be, is it short-term funded, one-time funded, grant funded, for example? Or is there a sustainable funding source for this? What are the trends? What are the constituent demands, elected official demands? What are the, I mentioned, what are the risks to that? So it will be, I'm hoping, a fairly straightforward exercise in a way that will lead us then to more of a priority-based budgeting next year. Because it's, a priority-based budgeting is taking your strategic plan and basically saying, are what we're doing in every single department in line with this strategic plan? And like any organization, you know, you end up taking on more work, and then you add more work as more things come your way. And slowing down and saying, what can we give up, is a very intentional exercise, and this is the first step towards that. So I'm hoping that it's going to be relatively straightforward, and it is a new process, and it's something that I think hopefully will help address some of the concerns that I certainly heard throughout the community, throughout the campaign, that's for sure. All right.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. You bet. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
So up next, we do have the legislative branch. Oh, we're gonna do judicial branch first. And so we have our 3 municipal judges here.
Very nice.
How long do we have?
You can go until 7:40-ish.
Okay.
We can do that.
And then 15 for questions too, so.
That's great.
Sure.
So, welcome everyone. We are the 3 municipal court judges. My name is Jake Coolidge. This is Eli Parker, Jennifer Striano.
Hello.
We're going to talk, I guess, briefly about the structure of municipal court, and then all judges love their specialty courts and programs, so we can tell you a little bit about what we're doing in municipal court. But generally speaking, we are like the legislative branch of the city government. There are 3 elected judges, 3 different departments. We're all independently elected. The 3 of us work very well together. And we run 4-year terms, and municipal court judges are elected on the same 4-year cycle. So from here on out, the 3 municipal judges are elected every 4 years. The court that we run is what's called a court of limited jurisdiction. So basically, courts have varying jurisdictions. Kind of bigger courts are general jurisdictions, meaning they can take all sorts of cases. Municipal court is limited jurisdiction, meaning the types of cases that can be brought in municipal court are limited in scope. So specifically what we deal with primarily are criminal offenses that are misdemeanor offenses that happen within city limits, which is to say criminal offenses that are punishable by a year or less in custody. So generally speaking, your less serious offenses. We also have some civil jurisdiction over a handful of different issues, but primarily what we deal with civilly are civil orders of protection, which is when someone comes to the court, you might colloquially like a restraining order, those kind of things. So those are the 2 things that we primarily deal with. I think we have over 10,000 cases a year between the 3 of us, and that can range from anything from speeding tickets to these orders of protections to DUIs to partner or family member assaults, kind of anything in that range. And so we also kind of, in that capacity, work with law enforcement with things like search warrants, bringing people in custody when they're arrested on the street, and those kind of things. So we have a lot of overlap with the executive branch for sure, specifically in their enforcement capacity. We don't really have judicial review like you would see in a federal legislative branch. We don't inherently review all of the city council's ordinances or legislative referendum. We don't like review them for constitutionality. So we really are more restricted in our interaction with the other branches in that regard. The kind of things that we do on a regular basis is every morning one of the 3 of us presides over jail court, which is that we will see whoever was arrested the night before, and either who was arrested on an offense that they cannot bond out on or were not able to bond out on. We'll hear bond arguments about those folks, schedule future hearings, and set their conditions of release. Similarly, we will have hearing where people are represented by attorneys, kind of like a law in motion day is the term you might hear, where we actually see people's cases, determine what's going on, do change of pleas, do sentencing. And then we also every day have open court, which is for people who want to come in and resolve any of their citations or criminal cases or make an initial appearance. So if someone were to get, for instance, a speeding ticket in here and want to ask for a reduced fine, you come down to municipal court and you will find one of us on the bench ready to hear from whomever. So we really are, I'd say the majority of our time is spent actually directly involved with citizens. We don't, in kind of drastic contrast to Mayor Davis's daily schedule, where she's working with like a lot of city agencies and department heads and people across the country in these meetings, we really are spending most of our day with folks who are charged with offenses in Missoula, which is, I think, a fantastic part about our job. We are over in City Hall on the first floor. There are 3 courtrooms. There's a clerk of court's office. We oversee about 20-some staff, some of whom are clerks who sit in court with us all day, many of whom are clerks who work behind the scenes to make sure the entire system runs. And a lot of what we do also focuses on some of our court programming, because I think a lot of what the 3 of us share in terms of our mission is that what we want to do is make sure it's effective in terms of kind of overarching judicial policy, which is to say we want to be cost effective, and we want to make sure that we're doing things that address kind of the underlying causes of the circumstances before us. Certainly traffic's one thing, but we do deal with a lot of criminal offenses. So we want to deal with a lot of those offenses and the best way to approach them. And so getting into some of the programs that we do, and I do want to leave time for questions because I feel like people don't necessarily know a lot about their local judicial systems. But one of the things that we've worked with in the county is we've developed our own pretrial support program. So when people have pending cases, we try and make sure that they don't miss their court dates, because if people miss court dates, they get warrants. Warrants get issued, police officers arrest people, they go to jail. That's a tremendous cost on all of us, frankly. So we're trying to do things that we make sure that people don't miss their court dates and they have the resources they need to not commit new offenses during the pendency of their case. So we've developed a pretrial program with the county that has been really successful so far, and we're working with folks to try and get them the resources they need during the pendency of the case to keep them out of jail and to keep them out of trouble. So some of our staff is also dedicated to making sure that the programs that we have can operate, can evolve, and are responsive to the community, because part of our role also is to be integrated community partners, working with people like the Poverello Center, working with people like the crisis intervention team and the mobile support team, making sure that we know all of the actors in the community that are responding to these issues that are also oftentimes really complex, but manifest themselves with involvement in the criminal legal system. So that's another kind of part of our job, is to make sure that we understand the entire community as a whole, so where some of the challenges are and gaps in services, and also so we can make sure that we're integrating the defendants that appear before us in those services and make sure that we have a responsive system that doesn't basically stay in silos and that's ineffective. So that's kind of a big structural picture of what we do and what our daily, I guess, job is like on a day-to-day basis, but I guess I'll turn to Judge Triano.
Okay. All right, so I guess I'll just talk a little bit about one of our programs that we've recently developed. I think we're probably close to 2 years maybe in this program, but I guess overall our goal or mission for this court was to just kind of modify the role of it. There's always that role that courts and judges are there for punishment, and that really is, that's one aspect of the court. But for, I think, a majority of folks, really that's not the most effective way to handle most of their cases. And so we wanted to make the municipal court more of a resource for people, and actually a place where people can get help or get resources that can improve the situation, rather than just looking at some mere punishment. So one of the programs that we developed is to focus on the offense of driving while suspended. So it sounds pretty minor offense, but it can create huge barriers for people to have their license suspended. It's a jailable offense, so it can result in, again, people going to jail, that sort of thing. And it's really a result of possibly things that if they miss a prior court appearance, whether it was a speeding ticket or something, a pretty minor offense, if they miss that court appearance, then their license could be suspended. And then obviously the penalties and things like that can increase. Or it's a result of maybe they weren't able to complete the program, so non-compliance of some sort, one thing or another. It could be failure to pay child support is another way that people's license can be suspended. So it's a variety of reasons. But once their license is suspended, it kind of can create a whole host of problems and barriers for those people. And so we've created a program called Traffic Court. It's very simple. And it's really, the whole goal is to just try to help people get their license reinstated. Most people just have no idea why they were suspended. So you could be just driving to work, driving your kids to school, you get pulled over for one reason or another, and they say your license is suspended. They could be taken to jail at that point, as possible. So they really, most people just don't know. We've had lots of people who we've found that are suspended for just clerical errors. Either the court did not lift the suspension when they should have, or the DMV does not kind of click their button to unsuspend the person. So we've had numerous cases where people have been suspended for 5, 10 years, and it was just a clerical error on one of those major roles. We've learned that really only one person now in Montana for the Department of Motor Vehicles is responsible for license suspension, so that's a hefty load for that person. So everyone's human, we're bound to make errors, and so this program has kind of identified those issues, but it's also for people who do need to meet court requirements or do things like that to get their license suspended or unsuspended, then we can assist them with that. We can direct them to, where they need to go and what they need to do and kind of help maneuver those pathways for them. The other thing is, which has also been a barrier though, is, like I said, if you miss courts in some other jurisdiction or in any jurisdiction, then those courts will suspend your driver's license. And so that could be if you get a speeding ticket maybe in Billings or something, and you don't resolve it, or you don't know about it, or you don't know that not going is going to suspend your license, then you get, you're here in Missoula and you get a driving while suspended. Well, some courts require that you appear in person to lift that suspension, which is really counterintuitive when if their license is suspended, but you want them to drive to your court. So our program, we're trying to, we meet regularly with the other judges throughout the state, so we're trying to persuade other courts to allow them to appear remotely. So sometimes if we can write a letter saying that they're in our traffic court, they're participating, would you allow them to appear remotely? That's been somewhat successful. So just kind of moving the needle on that way has been really helpful and successful. So overall, we've had a lot of success. We've been able to lift a lot of suspensions and get people reinstated, which really helps the community as well. We want fully, licensed drivers out there. And so, so that's kind of the one program that we've been working on while we've been here. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Another is shelter court. One of the first programs that, besides traffic court, that we started was in conjunction with the Pavarello and now the Johnson Street Warming Shelter. And as Judge Triano was saying, that there's a traditional role that court plays, which is to punish, which is usually in the form of a fine or maybe some jail time. Well, when somebody's experiencing houselessness, there's a limited benefit perhaps to finding somebody that can't afford food or rent. And quite often the behavior though needs to be addressed in some ways. And if the court is only functioning in a role of punishment, it tends to create a deterrent to them coming into court. And then you can't really deal with the underlying cause of why it is that the behavior is occurring in the first place that's getting them charged. And so shelter court actually goes to the Pavarello, and we're in a place where we can then address warrants that have been issued for not appearing, and then connect people while they're there to things like getting an ID, or perhaps getting connected to a mental health evaluator, or perhaps chemical dependency. And what this is designed to do is to start to address the underlying causes of the behavior, and that is something that through the court process we can hold people accountable to. So it's kind of a rethinking of the idea of what a court can be and of what accountability can be to the community. And so folks that show up, but we've got our staff going there, and it is a little bit like herding cats, and they just figure out who's there, and on a list of people that have warrants out, And it's very relational. It's very, we have the public defender there as well. So folks are, sometimes they've had these things pending for a long time. It's something that hasn't been addressed. It needs to be addressed. It's never going to go away until it's addressed. And they're then connected to not only their attorney that's going to walk them through the process, get them to the other side. Maybe there'll be a sentence that holds them accountable to getting some mental health or getting a chemical dependency evaluation, but also in the meantime, during the pretrial process, they're getting integrated in all the different services that exist in our community, which, maybe, we're struggling, but, compared to the rest of the state, we may be doing a little better in some ways in terms of addressing the needs of really the most vulnerable people that live here. And, so that's shelter court. It is starting, coming out of the pandemic, there was there are essentially two different types of warrant. One is for appearance, which is when you run in, you haven't done something that a judge has told you to do. You haven't shown up to court, some rule that you were supposed to follow after you were charged, and that resulted in a warrant. And during the pandemic, because of concerns about overcrowding, the courts began to rely more and more on appearance warrants than arrest warrants. And so there's a large backlog of different appearance warrants. And so going to shelter court helps us start to reduce the pressure on all of our officers that are out there serving these warrants, because we're actually getting them processed through court by going to the place that these people are living and not, and getting them back into the process that way.
All right. Any questions or thoughts?
So a question with regard to shelter court. You talked about trying to help people get to the underlying causes of the houselessness. Does the court have any kind of resource that utilizes to help or assess people for mental illness? Like, for example, schizophrenia.
Sure.
It's my understanding that a pretty sizable percentage of the unhoused people have some sort of mental illness. So I was wondering if you have a plan or a way to handle that.
Well, we do. We're not trying to duplicate services. So we may not have the funding to have like a case manager or a mental health evaluator like you're talking about, but we are trying to integrate with the services that are there. So
kind of like for people who are addicted to have a dependency, you can refer them to some sort of rehabilitation program. I was just wondering if there was something similar for mental illness.
So, yes. And that's part of where we're growing into, is identifying needs and then connecting to the resources that are already there. So, we have like Western Montana Mental Health Center, Three Rivers, we have Winds of Change. There are probably more than most other communities in terms of nonprofits that are addressing mental health needs. And as shelter court moves on and other programs, we're trying to integrate more with connecting people to those services as we get to know them through these courts. So it's really meeting people individually, getting to know what is going on, and then attempting to try to connect them to services while they're in the process of a disruption, and which is being charged, And so, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I have kind of a two-pronged question. The first one is, I know your programs are kind of new, on the newer side, but have you seen kind of a reduction in recidivism? And also, do you see in the future, I kind of term those programs kind of holistic approach to the legal system, and do you see that kind of going further, trying to help people stay out of jail and stuff like that because that could also cause family problems, which then it becomes a generational problem. So do you see that expanding as well?
So, to the recidivism question, recidivism is a really tricky thing to track, especially, crime data is ubiquitous, or not ubiquitous, it's evasive. And so it's really hard to tell like what impacts recidivism, especially on like a 2-year track, because typically recidivism is measured in like 5 to 10 year stretches. And it's particularly challenging for us to track because there's also this massive moving trend. I don't know, I read in the Missoulian recently, for instance, that Montana, in terms of its increase in the unhoused population, is we're like dominating the rest of the country in terms of the prevalence of the unhoused. It like I think the article stated that of the people experiencing chronic homelessness, we lead the country with a 551% increase since 2007. And I think the next closest was like 300% increase. So Montana as a community has a lot of issues that drive a lot of the criminality that we see, which is criminality that's driven by things like poverty and folks experiencing lack of housing. So for those reasons, like tracking a reduction in recidivism is a really challenging task. I will say that we've seen a lot of anecdotal data, and the data that we're able to track has been really promising because we've been able to kind of quantify the re-engagement of services that we've been able to get certain people. And I will tell you, and as I'm sure Mayor Davis will not be surprised to hear, one of the things that decreases criminality the most, a lot of the folks we see, is a roof over their heads. And so those are things that are outside of the scope of what we can control a lot of the time, but it's been great as we continue to take a more holistic approach to see how these other kind of non-traditionally punitive steps actually really do bring an end to some more kind of chronic criminality. So in terms of that, I would say we have a lot of reason for optimism in what we're seeing, even if we don't have a really tangible reduction in recidivism, if that makes sense. I think that kind of answers your question about the holistic approach too, is that, we're excited about the returns we're seeing and kind of the impact that it's having on the population that we work with a lot disproportionately.
I mean, I think that what Judge Coolidge is talking about is data.
Yeah.
But we have experience of seeing somebody come in over and over and over again, have 8, 9, 10, up to 20 cases pending at a time, and then they get a house, and I don't see them anymore. So, was it that they just liked breaking the law, or was it that that needed to be taken care of? And it wasn't going to get taken care of by spending a lot of money on putting them into the county jail over and over again. And, we'll do that if we have to keep the community safe, but ultimately it's not going to get resolved that way. So.
You mentioned that the judicial branch doesn't check the legality of policy that's set forth by the city at all. Is that common in a city of this size? Is there a reason?
Yeah, he asked basically why there's not a judicial review mechanism in courts of limited jurisdiction. And I would say that's a function of the statutes that create the courts of limited jurisdiction. So yes, it is common, and it's almost categorically true about any, because there's municipal courts, justice courts, and city courts are kind of the 3 courts of limited jurisdiction. And the types of cases and the types of authority that they have is very tightly confined by statutory law. So the actual court that would review constitutionality of local legislative bodies would almost exclusively be district court judges, which they actually operate a tier above us. So for instance, if someone appeals one of our decisions, the district court judge reviews them. So they kind of take that extra level of judicial review at local levels. And again, that's a function of kind of statute and the restricted role of courts of limited jurisdiction. Yeah.
So, still a little silly, but election season comes around and judges are on the ballot, and I have no idea how to figure out what work you're doing, what decisions you take. I feel like I'm looking at just names that don't. And can you point me in a direction of how I can get some of that knowledge?
Yeah, so I can just say, so we just ran for the first time 2 years ago, so that was our first election. I guess all we could say, so at that time we didn't have any prior decisions, obviously, that we were running on, but we definitely had philosophies that we were running on and policies and things of that nature. We're nonpartisan, so we're not affiliated to any sort of Republican or Democrat, so that's always neutral. But I think the most information would be, we were very open and candid about what we wanted to do. And so, you know, our websites and things like that and our speaking engagements that we went to. But I think obviously when we run again, that, you know, we tried to be out and candid with the public as much as possible. And I think we'll probably definitely be doing that again, for sure. But you can always, our reports are public. Anybody is welcome to walk in anytime. Anybody is welcome to get on Zoom. We always have a Zoom link, you know, for the most part, going. And so if you go to our website, the City of Missoula or the Missoula Municipal Courts, you can just click on you can get our calendars, you can get the Zoom link, so you can always watch in real time what we're doing. And I'll try to get you the best information there, for sure.
I mean, I was just going to ask, maybe I misunderstood this, but did you say that with housing court, did you actually take that to, I guess, outside the courthouse, like to the Paparella Center?
Well, yeah, they zoom in. So we have staff there, and then I'll be in the courtroom, or one of the judges will be in the courtroom, and we're seeing people as they appear from either the Johnson Street Warming Shelter or the Paparella.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're also working on things, I mean, we're working on something in March, for instance, that is where we have a whole smorgasbord of resources, and we literally set up court in a place, and everyone comes in, there's like haircuts and toiletries, and you can come into the court. So monthly we do these remote appearances, but then we're trying to also create more of an actual physical presence in more accessible ways, I guess.
That's really cool. Thank you.
All right. Sorry. Okay.
So Mayor Davis mentioned institutional continuity by like not having a cabinet that turns over with mayorship. Is there like a sort of analogous mechanism for if there is a new court in like 2 years, like are all these programs kind of just at risk then if the new court is not interested in them?
Yeah, I mean, and the municipal court's in a really interesting position as opposed to the executive branch and the legislative branch, is because there are some of these mechanisms that for continuity. The municipal court's in a really interesting situation because, as I said, all three of us are elected, all three on the same cycle. So it's conceivable that the next election, if all three of us were to lose and three different people felt completely different, they could just tear it all up. Mm-hmm. So interestingly, no, there's really nothing like that. So municipal court in the longer term, I think, could have somewhat volatile cycles.
Is that typical for municipal courts?
No, so this normally was just a one elected judge position, and then it was just expanded prior to our election to 3. So this is the first time 3 were elected, and so they just put them all on the same cycle, and so that one, from now on, that's what it will be. But prior to us, it was just one elected official.
And that was in response, there was a state law that was passed that said that every one of the judges had to be elected. Previously, under Judge Jenks, she was able to appoint and did appoint different sub-judges. And so with that new law, the city was in a position where they had to, in order to have 3 judges, run 3 elections. And that's how we ended up all in the same year. Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a break first. But before we head out for a break, and we'll give you about 10 minutes, I wanted to introduce Melissa, who's our other neighborhood specialist.
I totally was passing out flyers and forgot to introduce myself. I'm Melissa Kluker. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been here about 5 months now, so
Yeah,
having
so-
fun.
And if anything pops up throughout the entire session of the academy, feel free to reach out to either Melissa or I, and our contact information is in your binder. But yeah, we'll give you 10 minutes, and so if anyone just wants to just take a break, get some snacks, and just be back here at 8:05.
Call the meeting to order. That's what we do. This is the gavel that we use in our city. Didn't mean to scare you.
That's how we
call a meeting to order, and it gets everybody's attention because we are a chatty bunch. City Council. So my name is Gwen Jones. This is my 9th year on City Council. I was just reelected for a 3rd term. This is Mike Nugent, who's in his 1st term, and I'm sure you know his name. So we are the 2 city councilors who are here tonight, and I know there is an interactive activity. Where's Ginny? So we will try and be quick with our sections so we can get to the fun stuff. So this is like the 5th or 6th year, I want to say, that we've done the Local Government Academy, and it's just been a really great program. So thank you to Kalina for really pulling it together. It was hard during the pandemic, and now I feel like we are back. This is awesome. And this is the driest session. So if you're halfway okay with tonight's session, it gets better from here. But we have to lay the strong foundation.
What are you talking about?
I know, it's been awesome.
I'm a poli-sci major. This is great.
Well, I know, us government wonks like this kind of stuff. But so thanks for coming. So we will just talk a little bit about council. So I always tell people it took me 2 years to really get up to speed on council, to feel like I had my framework, I had some relationships in place, and I could start being effective. It's not like the city makes one widget. There are numerous different departments that are completely unique unto themselves. So it is a job in which I continue to learn something every week that I'm on council, and I don't think it'll ever stop. It is a fascinating job. We do have a very big council, biggest one in all of Montana, 12 people. I like to say it's a lot of cats to herd sometimes, but it also creates very robust discussion. And we are the policy setting body for the city. And when you campaign and then you get on council, and I felt like this, and I see it with new councilors too, you're like, yes. All right, I'm going to solve housing, I'm going to fix a budget, I'm going to do all this great stuff. I'm here. And then you start to realize how complicated it is, and what our tools are or are not, and what our resources are, what our budget constraints are, what our true decision space is, and it's complicated. And I also say we have, I think, over 80 big policies in place. Missoula loves policy. We are forward-thinking, we are progressive. We've created a ton of great policies over the years because this has been a activist council, a progressive council. We're really implementing a lot of those policies now. And that is a different mode than creating policy. So 12 of the 12 city councilors, everybody sits on anywhere from 2 to 3 or even more commissions or boards. I've done Missoula Aging Services in the past, downtown master plan implementation. I'm currently on the Midtown master plan implementation. There's tons more. And that's, first of all, you create relationships there, but as a counselor, if we're putting money into something, you're kind of keeping a finger on the pulse of how that money's being spent, but also sometimes you are connecting, like, okay, I'm sitting on council, I have a more holistic view of stuff. People are trying to accomplish this. Have you talked to this entity over here? Or there's going to be a grant opportunity. Or I know that this department of the city works on this. So we are connecting, and that's a very valuable thing. And I think implementing policies, yes, the mayor's office is implementing, but council, we are allocating resources when we approve that budget. We are fine-tuning the policy. We are also focused on the implementation, which if you can implement stuff, makes creating the policy look pretty easy. Implementing, I think, is a lot harder. So we create policy, we facilitate, communicate, and help implement. And then I think we are just conduits of information. I get lots of emails. There's a dead deer in the alley, who should I contact? First of all, I think they know our faces. We knocked on your door. We're lower down to contact us as opposed to the mayor's office. Oh, I'll contact my city councilor. Look them up and send them an email or call them, be it big or little. And so a lot of times it's just sending on emails to, you want to see if you can get a crosswalk. on your block? Well, I'm gonna send you on to our Public Works Department. They're gonna analyze it. Maybe they say yes or no based on the protocol that they have, but I can connect you. So we do a lot of that. And I will say that also there was a question regarding constitutionality of laws that we create, and our city attorney, that is a conversation with every policy that we're creating, is will it pass muster? So the court may not have a mechanism for it, but our city attorney is always very involved getting something to a defensible situation, I would say, with ordinances. So I don't, what else would you add?
Yeah.
This is like a quick broad strokes here.
Real
but-
broad. You know, I think the mayor did a great job, and so did our friends in the judicial. I think that Missoula's form of government is the easiest form of government in Montana to understand, simply because it's exactly like the federal government in the sense that there's an executive, the mayor's office, and then city staff, there's a judicial, and then there's the legislative. And so one of the things that sometimes I'll catch myself doing is a constituent might be talking to me about something, and I will say, well, the city does it this way. And they'll be like, what do you mean? You're the city. And I'll be like, well, I get why you think that, but technically, no. The city council is the policymaking body. The mayor and the administration then kind of take that and implement that, and we work together on a lot of things. So it can be somewhat confusing, but you know, essentially we're the, if you want to think that we're the lawmaking arm of the city, for better or worse. And Missoula has no shortage of people with opinions on new policies or new ideas all the time. So it's always very interesting. And I am very biased, but I think this is the best form of local government because I think it is the most accessible to the general public. And you know, we can talk about other forms of government. So I'm not going to pick on any other places in Montana, except to say our chief executive is elected. And that means that she is responsible to all of us. And that is not the case anywhere else in a city in Montana. And I think that is a real positive thing for democracy. So to put a little plug in,
yes.
You might get asked whether you think our government is good next year on a ballot. It's great. Don't mess with it.
No, go ahead. Oh, well, I was going to say, and I think we've had some exceptional mayors, and we've got a great mayor these days. And with the size, I mean, we're what, 78,000? We're going to be pushing 80,000 pretty soon in this city. We're growing, but we're still a small town in Montana. And I think it's still relationship based. And I think Mayor Engen, Mayor Davis, a lot of city councilors, you try and get to know a lot of people. You create those relationships because that is how, and the mayor referenced it too, that's how you're going to get things done. You're not going to get things done by pushing people or arguing with them. You're going to get done through collaboration and communication. And I think Missoula operates that way. And then the other thing I'd say is, having seen this for the last 8+ years, for some reason, this chamber is where Missoula works through its social issues of the day. It's not over at the university. County commissioners, people don't show up to their meetings. People come to this chamber, whatever it is, 2020, the summer of George Floyd, the pandemic, all of these issues, whatever social issues, not that we can always do something, and not that whatever decision we make, someone will be unhappy, but this is a very open forum. We take public comment, we hear things out, and this is the room, what is it in Hamilton? This is the room where it happens. So it's interesting to see there is a dynamic that I think for some reason, when people live in Missoula, they all look to city government, even though we're like, the county does that. And I'm like, yeah, but I want the mayor to handle it.
Or the state. We got an email today about a wreck on Highway 93, and it was this 16-paragraph email yelling at us.
Big wreck outside of Lolo. I'm like, yeah,
this is not in any way our jurisdiction.
For some reason, this is just the dynamic in Missoula.
But I think that's why it works so well. And I think that actually the mayor kind of talked about the citizen being in charge of government, and that's the chief executive is an elected citizen. during the campaign, we both talked to a lot of people, and Talkback is a radio program. If you don't know about it, you're probably better off. But someone called in once and was like, city council would be so much better if it was citizens. I got news for you. Because we all have to live in our ward. So I live in Ward 4. I heard some of you talk about being on the Lucy Clark leadership team. Gwen lives in Ward 3. We have to live in our wards to be elected to city council. It's not like state legislature where there's a little bit of room to move if you're in the county and things like that. Your 2 representatives in whatever ward you live in they're with you. They're taking their kids to the same schools. They're going to the same shopping centers. They're doing the same things. And I actually think that's what makes local government the best. Now, we're limited in a lot of what we can do. We would love to solve bigger problems if we had the ability to do that, but we're kind of limited. So things like, the budget. We have to sign off on the budget, but we don't get to determine the property tax structure in the state of Montana. That is the state legislature. If you know anybody out there, you could tell them to fix it because they're not doing their jobs. So we have to live within the system that's there. And that's a really difficult conversation every year. It's been difficult every year since COVID for sure, and it's going to be difficult again this year. So on the night that you all talk about the budget in here, I think you'll all kind of see it's not as easy as people think it is to just cut taxes by 30%, for instance. Because there's a lot of things that we're required to do as a city under state law. And if we don't do those, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be letting down our citizens. We're going to be in jeopardy of losing state funding for certain things. But then the mayor referenced the fire department. If we don't properly fund the fire department, their response times to all of their calls fall, and then your home insurance rates go up. Or potentially, if we really did a bad job of funding the fire department, you might not be able to get homeowners insurance at all. So there are things that local government does and we pay for that even if they're not state required, they're basic functions that you all expect. And I think that's one of the most interesting parts of being on council. I also chair the Land Use and Planning Committee, which is, if you like zoning, that's the committee to hang out with and be a part of. But I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about that committee is people often think that the city just comes up with these projects and says, oh, somebody build a subdivision right here. But that's not really how it works. Those are all, for the most part, private projects that come from people, and the local government's job is to determine, do they meet state laws? Do they meet our zoning codes? What are the conditions that we need to put on them? Are they meeting our parks requirements and things like that? So that's kind of what the actual process is. Sometimes if you read the comments on news articles, which is another thing you shouldn't do, you will see things like, why is the city putting houses there? It's like, well, we're really not. But there are ways where you all as residents, as citizens of Missoula can participate, and that's in the planning process. And right now our community is undergoing code reform, which will be a topic.
Community planning.
Community planning.
Yeah.
But if there's one piece of advice I could give to residents who want to be involved, that is the most impactful way to make a difference in your community. Because in a project like code reform, one of the things that we'll look at is the growth policy, which kind of says, how's the community going to grow? What are our values? And generally, we'll even come up with a map that'll kind of illustrate, well, we see density here, we see conservation and parkland here, we do this kind of big thing. And then when we as a council make zoning decisions, those have to follow the growth policy. So we can't just one day wake up and say, it's great that this is all single family right here, but I want 10 plexes everywhere. If that isn't part of the growth policy, we can't just do that or we're going to get sued. So there is actually value in participating in those kind of public processes, because that's really where policymaking begins.
Yeah, and that we talk a lot about our decision space. Oftentimes our decision space is pretty small and people are providing public comment far outside of our decision space, which is fine. We love to hear that, but there's a lot of framework around how we make all of these decisions, and understanding that helps understand how it all works. Yeah, and I would say my first budget in 2016 was so excited to get on council. And I had our first budget that summer, and I'm like, this is highly stressful. Oh my God, this is a terrible way to spend my summer. It's super stressful, and it has gotten so much more stressful since then. So we are I always say we're in a heightened era right now. This life is complicated. There's a lot of things coming to a head. America will hopefully get to a better place on the other side, but these are tougher times. And as we're talking about how can we trim the budget, how can we have to use the tools that we have for revenue. If you don't keep a department strong and pay those people well enough and staff them well enough, yet if you don't do that and you ask them to do too much, you will not retain those employees, and it turns into a dysfunctional department soon enough. So there's a lot of balancing going on when we don't have any extra, and frankly, our property taxes are getting higher every year. So it's complicated, but we have good mayor, good staff, and we figure it out. So are there any quick questions? Because there's an interactive activity then to have you see it from the other side.
I had a question. It's more on kind of balancing of your lives, because obviously this is a job, but it's really, when you look at it, they consider it a part-time job. With the economy, that's probably aren't getting paid enough to be your only job. How do you balance that, your other jobs, and family? Because there's going to be there's a lot of people who, I mean, you said you're a poli-sci major. This is a natural thing, but there's a lot of more people that didn't grow up thinking they were going to be in government and now want to be a part. But that's part of reality too.
I think we might answer this differently, but
yeah,
I've said on the council floor that I actually think that being a city council person is not representative of Missoula because it's not accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We're considered like a third time, maybe
15 hours.
15 hours a week.
It's supposed to be. Yeah.
So some of us have other jobs. I have a full-time job.
Yeah.
It's easier to be a council if you are retired, personally wealthy, financially flexible, or married to somebody who makes a lot of money. Then we have a few people on council who balance this in full-time jobs, and that becomes a lot tougher. And I'm lucky enough to work in a profession where I can move things along. But I was joking with our current council president, Amber Sherrill, the other day about you got to watch yourself because you say yes to too many things that take all your time because you want to be a good council member. And maybe there's an issue in Lewis and Clark that the leadership team cares about. So I'll be like, hey, I want to dive into this, but you kind of have to find balance. I don't know that any of us do it well. I think that to be a good council member, you've kind of signed up to understand that you're giving your time, and there's a stipend, but really it's kind of bigger than that. But there's no perfect answer. I don't know if you've been on council longer than me, so you might have a better system.
It definitely is public service, and I think people who don't see it that way have a hard time. They want to earn a living wage, and I'm like, well, it's public service. When I first got on council, I was still practicing law about 30 hours a week, and I still had 3 kids at home. Now as of this year, I dropped all of my bar memberships. I'm thrilled, and all of my kids are out of the house. So I was scrambling. I mean, and I could do it, but but now I definitely have more time. But I know that like 20, 25 years ago, the majority of the people that were on council were older white guys who were retired. It was a pretty static. The folks on it was kind of just one sector of society. And now I'm 58 and I'm the oldest person on council, which is kind of a bummer.
We got up to 4 males after this last election. So
and we have
very female.
We have a broad spectrum across numerous generations. So it is interesting. I think it is more reflective of, when I first got on council in 2016, there's a big article that it was a majority of women. It's been a majority of women for the last 8 years now, so it's kind of interesting.
We probably should have made a bigger deal, but you have a female mayor, a female council president, a female council vice president.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the first time that combination's ever been, right? Because we have one other mayor in history. So
I think it has to. We haven't actually taken a look at the records, but yeah, because the only other time there was before the mayor was 1947.
Yeah. Something tells me there wasn't a female. All right, I'm just going out. One other thing, and then we'll move on to the question.
Yeah.
Zoom has actually made it a little bit easier, or I guess we're teams. We much prefer to meet in person, and our rules encourage our members to be in person, but every once in a while, there's a committee meeting where somebody doesn't have childcare, so they'll do the committee meeting from home on Teams. And so that's made it a little bit more accessible, I think, but it could be better.
I think a baseline requirement, though, is people have to have a flexible job. Like, I think it would be very hard for a teacher you just can't be in two places at once.
Well,
So there kind of are some baselines to begin to make it work. And it's public service, so, I don't know.
I just want to say I think it's probably insight. It's really fascinating to hear people speak on this, especially Alderperson Nugent talking about kind of the privileges that might have to be in place for you to be able to take on this job. Do you have any idea, from how I understand, if it's not set up to be like your primary source of income, and then how I understand it's not always easy to devote a lot of time to crafting policy from like step one to the finished product. How do we incentivize? Do you have like ideas on how we incentivize, or not incentivize, but kind of flip that script? Because a lot of, everyone who voted for you was inspired by what you campaigned on and probably wants your voice. And maybe I misunderstand the policy writing process, and forgive me if I do. But how do we flip that script? Because if I voted for you, I want you to have that time and that privilege to be able to start crafting stuff based on what you campaigned on.
I would say, I think we get folks from all different walks of life on council, and when you have 12 slots, you can bring a lot of different life experiences to council. So Heidi West just rotated off council. She and I were on it together for 8 years. And she would be very upfront about the fact that when she moved to Missoula, they did not have money, and she worked incredibly hard and used every program out there to get to a feasible place. She also, I think she only sleeps like 4 or 5 hours a night. She's a super hard worker. But she brought that experience to the table, and when we're talking affordable housing, she had a lot of experience with that because she works in that arena, but also understood it. And so I think that 12 is a lot, but the upside is we do get a lot of different life experiences. So I don't know that I'm answering your question, but I think also we all bring something different to the table. We divide and conquer. There's a little bit of that. Because there's no way to know all of this, but we do a lot of that and dive deep into areas that we are interested in.
Yeah, I mean, you build relationships with your colleagues, you kind of pick each other up. So there are areas that I am so interested in that I know that I'm going to be one of the lead council members kind of working on X. But there might be other things that are important to me, but I know Gwen is an expert in it, so I know she's going to lead it, and I'm going to meet with her regularly and kind of stay involved in that.
Yeah.
And kind of build that process. So we figure out ways to work around it. I would say that it's rare that you would come across a time where if a council member had an important thing they wanted to work on that they didn't find ways to make it work. You also build good relationships with the staff. Obviously, the staff works for the mayor, but this is why, again, building relationships is so important. If we're working towards the same goal, we definitely want to work with the staff before it comes to council so that what we bring complies with law, makes sense with what's actually feasible for staff to be able to do in the current structure without having to find more money to do things. So I mean, it's a process, and it just takes longer. I don't know if either of us have a great answer, because I don't know that there is a great answer. I'm not an advocate of creating full-time local legislative. That's just not.
Yeah.
That's a whole different level of complicated. So I don't know if we have a great answer, but every 10 years you get a look at it. I think you guys should have it first.
I want to stand up. Again, my name is Paul. I've been here for almost 5 years. Montana, or especially Missoula, has been a city of refuge of people. And I'm one of those people who gets that chance to be resettled here. and take this occasion to thank all Missoulians who are here for opening the door to welcoming us. We feel home, especially that people try to open their door to welcome unknown people to be part of them. Now, I just follow all the three groups of local government. I also try to understand how that work, because since we get here, my first place was between Southgate Mall and Northwestern Energy. And for me, I was thinking that I can get one of the leaders of the neighborhood to come even to greet us, okay? We have a new come in this area, I'm the leader of this area. But I never see someone like that. Now, 3 years later, I bought my house in Lolo. Then I tried to invite my neighbors to come on the opening house. I shared that invitation. Some of them show up and we celebrate. And I was waiting to see who can show up and say, okay, I'm the leader of this area, so we can know how to build. And now, according to the local government, where is the root of, we just come and get at the level to be the county, or where is the root to know that where is the local or the leader of the neighborhood? So it's okay, I'm the leader of this area, I'm the leader of this area, so we can know when we come in as a newcomer, we can know how to deal, how to get easy integration. And I can say, my other question is, what is strategy that the City of Missoula have to let refugees feel well welcomed? I say that I feel home. Thank you for the things that Missoula are doing, but I know you can do more by trying to help us to be flexible. We used to see only soft landings, they are doing great. We used to see IRCs, they are doing great, but where is the local government who are trying to welcome refugees in Missoula? Thank you.
Well, it's a great question, and each neighborhood in Missoula has a neighborhood council. If you live in Lolo, I believe there is a community council, because that's a county. City does not go out, so there's a community council. But then I think what you're talking about is kind of on a bigger level of how does the government have some type of institutionalized interaction with folks who are coming here from foreign countries. And I don't know that we really have anything in place technically. I mean, I did sit through a meeting like 6 months ago, I don't know if you were there, where it was with numerous refugees talking about what, and the county commissioners were there and others folks, what can we do to help? And that was a great meeting, honestly. It was a really good discussion. But we don't really have anything. I mean, it's a good idea. This is why I like meeting in person, because you know what? You get great questions and great ideas as opposed to just an email. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on?
No, I think it's a really interesting question, something for us to put thought into.
Yeah.
Well, we were just over here talking about the concept of a welcome wagon, which Missoula had some years ago through coordination of like the Chamber of Commerce, and this conversation has come up a number of times. And even just this last weekend, I was visiting with a bank president, and we were talking about some larger projects that are going to be coming to Missoula. Because, you know, the Rocky Mountain West is absolutely an area of interest. We are going to see more people interested in Missoula. And so investor types, right? We're going to see folks that want to invest projects in Missoula. But are they invested in Missoula? Are they part of the community? I think that's one of the questions that we can't legislate that, right? We can do our best to incentivize that, but the reality is we're in a situation in which if people come in and are going to develop a certain part of town, and people are moving here, which is
awesome, but do they know why Missoula is so awesome? You know, there's been a number of things that this community has done, community members, nonprofits, businesses, local government, that have really done the things that have made Missoula so unique. And is there a way for us to think about how we could collaborate, maybe as local government? Ginny was just suggesting maybe the Missoula Organization of Realtors, you know? Maybe we think about ways that we can figure out how we are more intentional about that type of communication and welcoming new people in a way that invites them to understand the history and things that have made Missoula what it is, and then offering what is new. And something to think about. Maybe that's your thesis project for this class.
And I'll just say really quickly too about the neighborhood councils, and we'll get into it more when we reach the community planning, development, and innovation session down the line, but that is really what we want to accomplish with those. We have 20 neighborhoods in Missoula, and so we're really trying to localize local government when we're getting that small and really focusing on the neighborhood issues there and building community within that neighborhood. And you know, there's still a lot of work to be done there, but that is a big focus that we'd love to have, is like, how can we welcome new neighborhoods or new neighbors into our community. But
A couple more questions, because I know that they have something good planned for you. Kirsten?
Yeah, I have a question for you. Where are you coming from?
I'm from Congo.
Congo. So I'm curious about, like, part of it could be your question is cultural, because you know, in Congo, maybe there's a different type of a cultural way where people, there is leadership, and you kind of know who that person is. You know, you could go to them and have like a discussion, and it's sort of, it's not so formal. That's in some of the traveling that I've done in different communities that I've, you know, come to know. I'm wondering if maybe it's also kind of like a cultural difference, and it'd be interesting to hear your perspective, like where you come from. Were there those community leaders that were just kind of like the people that everyone knows in this block, you go talk to this person?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And, to try to answer that question, it's kind of to try to learn from you. But you see, United of America is a country which is look like everyone want to follow the thing that they are doing there. And according to all situations, I was in Rwanda as a refugee for 18 years, and even in the camp, they tried to organize this role, to try to even to know the problems that the neighbor can have. So, okay, a leader for this line can record the problems that refugees have there. It's not problem. It's not something that comes from the culture. It's the administration. Even, for example, you can take all those streets. So these streets have a leader. It's just a volunteer, just to know the problems that happen in that area for the security. For, you know, when we come here as a refugee, some people are afraid of refugees. But if you have a leader for a street, you can know those people who are there are friend people, are friends that can try to help other people who are afraid with refugees, are afraid with immigrants. Okay. The leader of those areas, the leader of that street, know all the refugees are there, no, and like I said, don't worry about those refugees, they are friend people. And that can try to help us to feel very welcome. It's not a problem of culture, it's just something that is administrative, and USA is the mirror of all the world. You can think that we don't understand how we don't have that little piece, the roots, where the government can bring the food. That's one way.
A couple more questions. Yeah.
One more. Well,
You mentioned that council has a decision space that they operate in, and that sometimes the public makes comments that are way outside of that. How do you convey the decision space to the public? Or do you?
So we try. You know, our meetings follow procedure, so they do follow a certain protocol in the order of business on our agenda. But I always tell people, you know, when we're in committee where we kind of do our work and asking questions, it's usually to find out information. When it's the final council meeting on the final vote on something and I'm asking a question, it's usually so people will hear me ask that question and hear that answer. Like there's questions and answers, and then also we speak to the decision space. The problem is, under Montana law, a lot of times we have to hear public comment before we offer our opinion, because we want to keep an open mind and hear everybody. So sometimes we can't speak to something until everyone has spoken. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. It is awkward at times, but it's, I don't know, what do you think, Mike?
Well, I think it's tough, because often when people, and I'm thinking of it kind of from a land use perspective, but when people come to comment on a subdivision or something like that, usually it's not generally supportive. And often people want council to take a stance that we really can't do. Like, they should build a park here, they shouldn't build houses here. Well, that's private property, that's not necessarily in our. So we try and do that, and we're committed in our committee meetings over the next few months to do more kind of training sessions that are really for our council members, but also for any public that wants to hear it or pay attention to kind of like how certain things work. So this past Wednesday, the committee of the whole, we did an hour on land use, and we talked about kind of state law and how subdivisions go through or how rezones go through. And at the end of it, the land use staff was talking like, you know, we should really put this on the website so the public maybe can see this. And so I think that kind of simple things like that to maybe make things a little more approachable as we go through that process might help. But it can be tough because, and I'm not even saying this is wrong, but sometimes people come in and they got something they want. And, you know, if council doesn't vote their way, they just didn't listen to them.
Let's do one more.
Really quick.
Yeah.
So what's the most helpful way for the public to be involved? What do you wish people did more often?
That's a good one. I mean, honestly, I have coffee with constituents all the time. We can talk through something, and that's, you know, emails are pretty limited. I think having coffee, if there's something that you're really interested in and you want more information on or whatever, is a great thing to do. And I have the time. I don't have my kids at home anymore, and I don't work as much anymore, which is a luxury compared to some folks on council. But
I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm out walking the neighborhood and someone sees me out there and they want to talk about something, I'm all for it. You know, it's like, I've got time, let's chat about this. I often will have random conversations with people when I'm dropping my kids off at school about stuff. So I mean, you know, stuff pops up. I'm the worst at email, although that's probably the easiest way for someone to get stuff into the public record. So it's like, hey, I reached out to you. I would encourage, like, if you have something you want to talk about, don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, can we meet? Or can we set up a time to talk? Or get coffee or do whatever and do the follow-up. Because sometimes there may be weeks where we don't hear from anyone, and then all of a sudden we hear from 50 people in one day about something that's not even on the agenda.
Yeah.
So sometimes stuff gets lost a little bit. I think.
And sometimes we can refer you to staff who can give you a bunch of information on how something works and how to request something. I would just say reach out, honestly, it's the best thing to do.
And we all have we all have city phone numbers posted on the website, and those voicemails go straight to our email as well. So if somebody calls and leaves me a message and it goes to my email, I'm like, oh, this is a quick thing to call back. So.
Yeah. Okay, without further ado.
And let me make one more comment too. In your binders, we have resource lists in there, and so all of the city council emails and phone numbers are on there, maybe just emails, and then the neighborhood leadership teams too, because that's another avenue. And then I wanted to also note that for every session, we'll hopefully have at least one city council member there,
And so there'll be more time for some specific questions throughout this academy. So, great. Thank you. Now for the rest of the time, we're going to do a quick little activity. And Ginny and Mayor Davis are going to do it up here.
I have getting lectured. Beverly, the question you asked is actually really, this is perfect for it.
Yeah. Well, I have thought about so much in my years at the city about how do we have the people we serve understand how narrow, I mean, really the power of every branch is. And it kind of fits in what we're going to talk about next, but so often I always use for an example, there was a development of condominiums proposed for 4th Street, and the public hearing went till like 3 in the morning, 2.
Well, yeah.
Well, it was very late, and it was this long line of people that went way out, and they were coming up to the lectern and saying, just say no to this development. Well, the council is unable to say to a property owner, you can't develop your property. They can put parameters on it. It has to meet zoning. In this particular case, there was a trade for some affordable housing piece of it, but they are unable to say, no, you can't develop your property. And I do consider that that is on us to be better at explaining to the public, no, here's, the council gets to say this. It's just this big. They don't get to say no. So it is pretty interesting. So this happens all the time in every part of government, and we have a really short time, so it may end up that instead of having this be a little discussion, it might be just something that you think about. But I chose this example. We thought, what can we do for an activity involving the executive branch? And I thought, okay, so what happens so often is we get involved with the public who we serve, and they want to, something becomes a gigantic community issue. And the city may have absolutely nothing to do with it and no power over it, but that does not stop people from being interested in it, upset about it, emotional about it, and coming and talking to the council about it. So sometimes we have a little tiny piece of it. And I wanted to use this example I wanted to look back and say, okay, this happened, and have you think about what would I do if I were the mayor, if I were the communications person, if I were the council person in this case. So this happened in summer of 2014. In midsummer, we had a Missoula resident named Anita Maddox who applied for a special use permit and a street use permit, which is generally for a parade. And it's pretty administrative, and it just is so that if there's traffic control, the police look at it and the police know to be there and help. Well, the event was called Bear As You Dare. And it became gradually, people started calling the mayor's office, and it became known to us that this was a naked bike ride. Okay. We started hearing from people saying to the mayor, you need to deny these permits and don't let these people do this obscene activity. Well, our longtime city attorney, Jim Nugent, who's Mike Nugent's dad, and we loved working with him, said to the mayor, public nudity is not a crime. And you can't, it's not indecent, you can't deny somebody a street use permit because it would involve nudity, which is really kind of interesting. And most people don't know that. It is not legal to be lewd and lascivious. So it kind of depends on how you act while you're doing public nudity. So, and we have an ordinance that if you really want to read our ordinance about it, you should go on our website and look at city laws and read the ordinance because it's hilarious. It's very specific about how you would be lewd and lascivious. So, mayor's office started, we were just absolutely inundated, and our poor people who answer the telephone, I mean, would be reduced to tears because people were so just extremely worked up about it. Here's an example. I looked back in our file today and it just was cracking me up and making me remember. People said things like, the event's stated purpose is illegal public indecency. Somebody asked, how do you explain to children they have to keep their clothes on when adults don't? I thought that was kind of a point. A phone call, and the notes from the phone call by Heidi in our office were, opposed to bike ride, feels it is not fair to the pedophiles or sex offenders. You won't be elected to another term because of this. He's reported you to the Department of Justice. I cannot believe you are allowing nudes to travel in a group in our city. Have we no morals anymore? What are you going to do about it? And this just became like worse and worse. The mayor did sign the permits because the choice there, and here's the thing for you to think about, is a mayor could say, no, I'm absolutely not going to allow you to have a street permit. That would allow that group to sue you because you're saying you can't have this permit when there's no legal reason for him to be able to deny the permit. City attorney told people over and over, nudity alone is not illegal. This is complex and is linked to freedom of speech. The city cannot deny a permit or arrest someone based on nudity alone. What is not legal is lewd and lascivious behavior. Complaints, so if you went to complain to the police, this person had lewd and lascivious behavior, that would be investigated by the police as a crime. We put together a Bear As You Dare Q&A, which I wrote. We wrote a mayor's statement for the mayor to say at City Council, just kind of explaining, going through everything. He explained that police will be there. It's good for these people to have a permit because the public can see where the route is, where the travel will be, and the time of day and the date of the event, August 17th. So they cannot go downtown when that's happening if they don't want to see it. So that was in mid-July. So on August 5th council meeting, we had 90 minutes of public comment just on that topic. Very dramatic. People started like coming up to the lectern and reading from the Bible, telling the council how bad they were. And I mean, very genuine people who are just very upset about this and kept insisting, no, the mayor needs to stop this. So a lot of times you can explain to the public, we can't really, it's sort of like, we can't stop these condominiums from being next to you. And the public just, they do not want to hear that. They just say, just do something about it. It's so interesting. So on August 17th, they had the naked bike ride. 350 people participated. There's a photo gallery on the Missoulian website if you want to see that. 50 photos the photographer took. There were angry letters to the editor of the Missoulian for months. And the following winter, during the legislative session, a Missoula legislator whose name's Doc Moore introduced legislation banning provocative clothing inspired by the naked bike ride. He's the one who said he wished to ban yoga pants in public, inspired by Missoula's behavior. Legislation did not pass. So there you are, and you're the mayor. Would you take the risk of denying the permit because you had a section of the population who were really upset about it? In that case, you could be sued. We belong to, so cities in Montana belong to the Montana Municipal Insurance Association, MMIA. So it's like a self-insured group. And so people frequently sue the city for, I tripped and fell on the sidewalk. A pothole damaged my car wheel or tire. and MMIA works those things out for us. They don't cover constitutional issues. So all the taxpayers would be paying for the legal bill if this group sued you saying you didn't allow my naked bike ride. So you've got people who are hijacking council meetings, you've got people who think we should stop it, and then you also have supportive people too. There were some people who had the courage to say, this is great, it's highlighting bicycle use, and it was supposed to be a like sustainable transportation thing, but naked. So how do you serve everybody, make everybody feel that they're all heard, be responsible fiscally, be responsible to public safety? You know, of course, the police were there and nothing happened that was lewd, lascivious, or criminal, and they didn't arrest anyone, nothing. But those are the kinds of things that happen that we have to balance, and a lot of it is on the mayor, and a lot of it is on the city council members because they're elected. And it's really hard. I know, and I'm just curious about what would you do, and
could you just clarify, is it a city ordinance, a state ordinance, or a federal ordinance that said that? So.
oh, that it's not illegal to be publicly nude? State?
State, okay.
Yes. Oh, no. I didn't know that before the naked bike
Is
ride.
that still the case?
Yeah.
So they can have another naked bike ride on
They
your
could.
watch.
I know.
If we bring this up, it might actually.
Don't be telling your friends about this scenario.
This was a while ago at a UM football game. It was first game of the season. It was a while ago. And some kid ran out on the field super drunk and he was naked. I thought he got arrested.
You did?
Because
That was not a pre-noticed plan applied for event. That was an act of somebody running where they weren't supposed to.
What's the terminology?
Let's not be nude.
well, but he was he
Lewd and
arrested because he was
lascivious.
naked?
Yes.
Someone decided.
Well,
it
he was a little, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I know. Lewd and lascivious, or designed to incite a reaction from a spectator.
Okay. All right.
And so that's why, like, people who expose themselves in parks, like that happens, or any other public place, that often leads to an arrest.
Okay.
I knew you'd all think it was funny.
I mean, there's gotta be other rules that, like, people can't just have a parade anywhere they want, anytime they want.
Right.
So, like, what other boundaries were in place that are like valid reasons to say no?
Well, I think therein lies some of the challenges. There's not really a lot, as long as
There's not a lot.
compliance, you know.
You know, the right to peaceably assemble is kind of a big thing in our country. A lot of times when we say no or when we ask them to modify, it has to do with traffic. Often people want to close a street, and a parade, like homecoming parade, the whole street has to be closed. So the police look at the traffic control plan, and sometimes they'll say, no, this needs to be modified, or it needs to be at a different time. But there are not a lot of curbs in our country on peaceable assembly, naked or not.
We have a noise ordinance, that would be the other thing we would take
Oh,
into consideration
yes.
for something like that. Or like River City Roots Festival, you know, they have to apply and get approved by the city in terms of the length of time that music is played outdoors, and the decibels and all of those things are handled through ordinance. And then it moves, that permit moves through different departments, and police and fire and public works, we all check off on it and hold people accountable then to what we agreed to, basically.
Was there media on it that was explaining that this was a state law that allowed? so that that was getting disseminated to the public.
Mhm.
Sure.
And the mayor was saying it, and I posted a Q&A on the website, and we were saying it in news media, but, you know, a lot of people don't think that it should be okay. And we heard from those people, and all we could say there is, talk to your legislator and say, you need to change this.
David? So I don't envy the position that people were put in to officiate this, but I'd say that the inspiring part that you laid out was how the pains, it sounds like the administration at the time went to educating the public on the laws currently on the books, what would protect a group like that and mitigate some of the infighting that can go on and split the community. I know there are topics to this day that kind of rile the same kind of divisiveness, and so I root you on, you know, to continue efforts like that, public
Thank
or you know, where we're actually helping people understand where people are coming from, whatever their experience is, and what currently protects them. Because that's really inspiring that happened at the time.
Oh, I'm glad that it appears that way to you, because we try to bend over backwards to make sure that everyone is heard, even though everyone can't always get their way. And that part that's a real balancing act, especially for people who are elected. Yeah.
I'm just curious, in the examples you used, you talked a lot about like the public's opinion on this. If there were like businesses and business owners that were really upset about the parade and how it would obstruct their day, their work, how would that be received any differently at all? Or no?
It was 10 years ago, but it's still pretty vivid for me. I don't actually remember businesses taking a stance on it. Now, it could have been, I think that would have been different if they wanted to do it in the middle of a weekday and they wanted to maybe block off a street and have it be prolonged. It was 1 hour midday on a Sunday in August. So I don't think that it was actually disruptive at all to business. It probably actually brought people downtown. Notice in the pictures there were a number of spectators. Did you see that?
Yeah. It's good for business.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. Well, and I think, you know, in a more serious note, we've been thinking a lot about what the council had to wrestle with just recently with the ceasefire resolution. There's another thing that, I mean, certainly has zero humor to it, but is super serious issue, and they have to weigh the same thing when they have different parts of the community being equally passionate about you should do this, you should not do this.
I was gonna say, leaving space for both both of those opinions. I think that's kind of what you guys did in that other situation too, is like, you know, they have to think about, they may oppose this one, but those people participating in that event might oppose something later on down the line that other person that was opposed them supports. And so just leaving space for both opinions to happen and providing a space where at least they can come and voice those opinions. I think that's the most important thing, is just giving them the opportunity to speak. And for a lot of people, yeah, they probably wanted something to happen, but it probably felt good at least to just get that out there. Like, hey,
I think that's true. I sort of like what Mike and Gwen were saying about this room has somehow been for a long time the crucible of public opinion and where the public works out its frustrations, its joys, its sorrows. And it is interesting to me that I don't think that really happens across the street at the county. I don't think it does to some extent in the legislature, but the legislature is much more formal. And this is a place where anyone can come and say anything within the rules. Mayor Davis got her first real workout this week saying, please no personal attacks. We try to make it a safe place for people, but yeah.
something that I can try to add there is we have the right and the responsibility. But most of the time, people are focused on, this is my right, this is my right. If it's your right, could you please ask him what's also your responsibility? Why people are focusing on keeping their rights and don't know how to put out their responsibility?
Beautiful question.
I love those two things together, because it's true, isn't it, that we all have to think about, this is my right, but where's my responsibility?
Okay, ask him, I tried, I'm a father of three. I use my kid to bring those issues, so it's my right, it's okay. No problem, but tell me also two of your responsibility. I have also my rights, you have your right. As a parent, I have my right, I have my responsibility. You also as a kid, you have your right, you have your responsibility. Give me two of your responsibility, I can give you two of my responsibility. And for those kind of issues, I think we have to bring people on the table, it's okay. It's your right to go naked on the road. But, okay, but what's also responsibility on this problem? And if it's your right, what is your neighbor right also? Is to and kind of think at the end of the day it's going to, it's okay. It's my right, but it's not my responsibility, and something can happen.
And it's just this balance all the time, especially in a free society where we have a lot of rights. We also have a lot of responsibility to our neighbors. And in Missoula, we try to think about that.
That's a wonderful note to end on.
Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's very, very nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm gonna let you all go, and you can all think about naked bike ride.